Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Workplace Wonder, lessons from the experts. I got an expert for you today. An expert on what? We're going to find out. I'm just messing with him. He's a friend of mine. Today's guest is Marc Kantor, and today we will be discussing burnout. And what was the other piece that we said we were going to be discussing?
Lack of boundaries.
Oh, yes. The downfall of being boundaryless. That was my cool way of saying that. So, Marc, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No, it's my pleasure, man. I always love having a conversation with you. I feel like it's just so easy to talk to you.
Thank you.
You're somebody, I feel like you're a social butterfly, and I mean that in the best way. But I just feel like you make conversations easy. You make them fun. You're always lighthearted. So it's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Same. I enjoy speaking with you too. So
thank you. Is there any more compliments you want to give me?
Well, I mean, you're young and good looking. I mean, and I want to be young again. And so
all right. All right.
That's something money can't buy.
Yeah. Well, I use a lot of products on my face, so that helps. As always on the Workplace Wonder, I ask my guests to introduce themselves. The purpose of this is to promote inclusivity. I don't believe that the bios that we write for ourselves, that we reuse over and over again, always apply to how we feel every day. So I always put the guests on a spot a little bit, but so I'm going to put you on the spot and allow you to introduce yourself based on how you feel today. So whatever's important to you, whether that's being a dad, whether that's being a business owner, sharing your experience of what you've done in the past, just who you are.
Great. Got it. So I'm actually feeling pretty good. We just started the new program, new treatment center, and it's been a lot of work, that you obsess over nights, weekends, that kind of thing. And we're starting to turn the corner, which I've been really concerned about, but it's starting to feel better. Things are starting to slide into place, and I've been working out more regularly. And I've also decided that I'm not going to let this thing kill me. I'm not going to have a heart attack over this thing. I'm just going to do my best. So a little bit of surrender.
Okay. So you're in your introduction, then I hear you saying that you're a business owner. You're somebody who started a new business recently. So you're in that startup phase. And you've been pretty much grinding away recently, but today you're starting to feel good. The company's turning a corner. You're starting to see your work be realized.
Yeah, we're starting to see results. Things are falling into place. And I tend to be a very, what we call codependent person. So very much someone who's, acutely aware, and maybe too much so, of how they're feeling, and letting that regulate how I feel. And I decided about 3 weeks ago, I'm just, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to, you're never going to have success while you're, in a tortured state. If the success is much, much more likely to come when for me, when I'm relaxed and I feel good, and there's positive energy, and I'm not beating myself up.
Tell me more about that, because how do you manage if you've gone for so long living a certain way? And obviously the topic is burnout is one of the things that we are going to discuss here. I'd imagine that living that way, I guess based off the emotions of others, contributes to burnout for you.
Oh, absolutely. I think it contributes to all kinds of negative things. I think that, that's being codependent is something we learn in childhood. It's a trauma response. I always say that when I was out there before I got sober, that I lied about everything. If I was going for dry cleaning, I would tell you I was going to pick up milk. Why I lied about that, I don't know. I mean, dry cleaning is something respectable people do all over town. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. But, I think that when you come from a situation as a child where you're constantly monitoring who you are and what kind of reaction that's getting, or wanting to stay small, or wanting to come up with try to predict what answers people want, it becomes part of your pattern. And then, a couple of months ago and along with that too is what, being an over explainer. Somebody says, where were you just now? I was in the bathroom. That's the answer. It's good, it's short, it's sweet, it's true. So where you're right now? Well, I was feeling like I had to go to the bathroom, so I went to the bathroom, and then I was in the bathroom and I checked my hair and it was okay, and then but I'm here now. It's like, okay, that's a lot of information. That's over explaining.
Yeah.
And you start to listen to yourself and question yourself, and it's exhausting. It's burnout. There's no success in that. Nowhere. Yeah.
I mean, first of all, I relate to a lot of what you're saying. I mean, I think there's a lot of similarities between our childhoods, but for me, that over-explaining piece is something that I've struggled with, that actually has been a major challenge in this program I'm in currently, because they'll give us you have a total of 10 pages. And, every time I've ever been in school, they say it's a 10-page maximum, and, they let you go over. It doesn't matter. And in this program, they really challenge you and say, no, you need to learn to be concise. So my biggest problem is writing too much, because I'm over explaining every idea that I have out of fear that they're not going to get it. And they're going to think I'm stupid if I don't explain myself enough. And in reality, I'm just confusing people. I'm giving them too much information. Yeah. So but I want to go back to what you just mentioned earlier. So you decided about 3 weeks ago to stop living that way. So I imagine that's the first step in starting to overcome this. But how does that work for you? Are you more in tune with yourself now, and you're trying to acknowledge when things are happening in the moment, or how are you managing that?
Yeah, I think I should explain that, that typically over the last several years, in my own recovery, that I had learned to break the cycle of codependency.
Sure.
But getting into changing my role, having to work with other people, having to have other people to help to have decisions, and being accountable. I think it triggered it. So it's not like I walked around every day feeling that way with the people that I like and love. It's this. I think it was the stress of the situation, or learning to work with new people. Because prior to that, my business was like just me and this other person, and we had no conflict whatsoever, and it was just easy. And so now having partners and having people to be accountable for was really, and I think that's what triggered it.
Yeah.
But I think, really what it is, it's about surrender, right? I mean, I just decided that I don't like how this is making me feel, and I'm gonna let it go, and that, I'm gonna show up every day and do my best. And if we succeed, we succeed. If we don't, that wouldn't be good, but that's not going to be the end of my life either. So kind of let myself off the hook with it. And I, like everything else, surrender is, you can't, we never get what we want in life until we're fully surrendered, till we accept the fact that we may win or we may lose, and can be comfortable in both places. So, because you can't control that.
Right. You could show up, do the work, and hope for the best outcomes, but the outcome is out of your control. So you're basically doing the serenity prayer here.
Big time. Yeah. Big time serenity prayer.
Yeah. Got it.
That's it. Yeah.
No, that's great. And I could see, and I think you paint a really clear picture of doing the work on ourselves in terms of codependency or complex trauma. You paint a really interesting picture that I think people should recognize, is that these issues don't necessarily ever go away. They go away in our current situation, but they're always laying dormant, waiting for the next stressor to pop up so we can go back into survival mode.
Right. And that's taking back our will and taking back control, and, and it's really a futile effort, because, my definition of codependency, when people ask me what's codependency, I say my definition is, if I were a better person, other people would be happier. So therefore my happiness or my life is in their control, right?
Yes.
Because if they're not happy, I'm not a good person. It's a lot of shame.
I recently had like a intellectual debate with somebody about this, and kind of talking about how the whole purpose of it is, of us doing this work, is that so we can actually, like, in a way, doing work on your codependency. This is my argument, and it's probably flawed and based in my codependency, but it's the argument is that we do work on our codependency so that we can better show up for the people in our lives authentically and actually build real relationships so we can make them happier, which in turn makes us happier.
Completely. Yeah. When you're comfortable in yourself, you can be there for people. You know, you can hear, you know, you're really listening to them talk and really process with it, rather than having the hamster wheel in your head going a million miles an hour. Like, I'm listening to my daughter talk, I hear the words, but really I'm obsessed about something else. And I'll tell you something, you know, I recently heard something. I think it's true. So whatever you're obsessing about at that particular moment, that's your higher power. So if you're home at night or on the weekends or holidays and you are obsessed with what's back at work or your job or your boss or your colleagues, they are your higher power, right? They are dragging you around, just like if somebody's taking, you know, obsessed with a drink or a drug. That obsession, that is your higher power. But
I like that. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Huh. Making me think here.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah, please. I've thought too much recently. So with the burnout topic, you know, I think we've discussed burnout a number of times on this podcast, and I think we have if people want to go back and listen to, I think one of actually the first episodes, there's probably two actually about burnout, but it's an important topic. If you want to go back and listen and learn about the meat and potatoes of burnout, I would suggest going back to those episodes. They are live wherever you get your podcasts. But I think this topic of burnout, of burning ourselves out in the sake of being liked or appreciated, I think is a really interesting model. And that's where we go back to the other half of this, of being boundaryless and the downside of it.
Yeah.
And can you, what I always like to ask people when I ask them about a topic and they give me one, I'm curious what was going on in your mind. What were you thinking? Where did you see this conversation going when you brought up the downfall of not having boundaries and burnout?
Yeah, so before I got into this space, into the behavioral health space, I was in commercial real estate for a long time. And there were some years that were good and years that weren't. It was very lumpy. But the last couple of years, I was really burned out. Like I really just, it's like a dull pain that I just wanted it to go away. Like I wasn't even thinking about the success anymore. I wasn't striving for success. I was praying for it to stop. And I used to, before we relocated here and before I switched careers, I constantly had that feeling of, I guess they call it ennui, just that boredom, that frustration, that just the clock dragged on so slowly. And I used to sit in my office back in DC and I would run my fingers through my hair and I'd say to myself, I got to get out of here. I got to get out of here. And you know, so when the opportunity came to relocate to Florida and to do essentially what is a geographical, I took it, you know, because I think that, like, I think we radiate our emotions out of our pores. I think the emotion that comes, I think people can just tell. I think people just feel that energy. I don't know if you've ever done any equine work where, you know, they show you that, you know, how the person holding the horse's reins can control the horse without making a sound, or it's just that energy. And I think people are sensitive. Like, people know what you're radiating. And I would sit in business meetings with prospective clients, and in my head, I'm thinking, I wouldn't hire us for this. Are you kidding me? I know who I would. Let me make not me, but let me make a recommendation for you.
Sure.
That's real burnout. You're just like, you're so checked out.
You can't
And then,
imagine adding something else to your plate. The idea of you being hired for that job, it just sounds like stress. You don't feel confident enough in taking it.
yeah,
It's an important point because that burnout does skew our thinking and it skews us into imposter syndrome, where we
yeah,
feel like we're not worthy of a position or we shouldn't take a job, that we're not qualified, that we're too tired, whatever it may be.
yeah.
Burnout does play some tricks on our mind and tell us that we're not good enough to do something.
Well, not only that, I mean, it's you're going to start sabotaging too.
Yeah.
Because it's like somebody's holding you're trying to breathe, right? You're underwater and you just dying to breathe, and you can't. You'll do anything to come up for air, and I think that's what and that's what I was going through when I was truly burned out, and I had been. I mean, I was so burned out. I didn't even have I was completely out of bullshit. I mean, I couldn't even fake wanting to do it anymore. It was just, and now it's completely different for me, because and I realized too, 5 minutes after I left my former career in commercial real estate, that I would never again have a job or do something that I didn't feel passionately about. And I said to myself, well, I don't care if I have to put luggage on airplanes at the airport, because I like airplanes. I'm never going back to sit under fluorescent lights to do something, to drag myself around by the collar and just not have that passion and just not have that, that desire to, and that drive, which is really important to me. And it's a big part of what I do now. So, yeah.
Very relatable, I think a lot of us feel that way. And frankly, that's where my most recent job transition to this organizational development world came from, was that, and obviously it's been slowly brewing over the last 5 years, and I've been doing
Yeah.
work in the field, but primarily I worked in your world and for the longest time. And there was just slowly over time, there's just that strong urge that I was actually confusing with burnout, which may have been burnout, but
Yeah.
it felt like burnout and I was blaming burnout. But really what it was my passion wasn't aligning with what I was doing anymore.
Yeah.
And I was being teased on a daily basis
Yeah.
by my academic mistress of leadership.
Yeah.
And I wanted to divorce my old world and go be with my mistress.
Right. 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 That makes sense to me. When I first got into recovery, a big issue for me, and we've talked about this before, was food addiction, sugar addiction. And when you had asked me what I would talk about, what we would talk about, this scenario came to mind, and there was a woman who kind of helped me to become abstinent from sugar, and that's a whole other conversation. But she was a paralegal in D.C. at a very big law firm, very big international law firm. And for her, planning her food and working around her recovery was like what was her, it was really important. It was really important. And she told me that she had noticed, like, one of the lawyers would come out and they would say, it's 4:55 and say, I need someone to work late tonight, who can work till 9 o'clock tonight. And she said, that she used to be one of the women in the secretarial pool that'd be like, oh, me. And part of her recovery is that she no longer did that.
Mm.
And she said, and these other women would volunteer, throw themselves on the fire to get that appreciation, whatever. And she said to me, but you know what, Mark, the truth is, it's not really appreciated. They don't really care. They're not thinking about you. And it's true. I think that's mostly true. I think they appreciate that you stayed at that moment. They appreciated that the work got done. But she was talking to me about it in terms of prioritizing yourself and your recovery. And she says, well, meanwhile, now they're eating dinner out of a vending machine, or, having food delivered to the office that's crap, and you're completely sacrificing yourself because what you're going to get in return is a teeny morsel of appreciation and recognition. But in the big scheme of things, people don't sacrifice yourself.
Yeah. It almost makes no sense at times.
And I'm not saying don't work hard. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, if this is the fight of your life and this is your passion and this is your dream, then go for it. But if it's somebody else's passion and somebody else's dream and you're just along for the ride, and now you're sacrificing your well-being, your eating, your recovery, your family time, what you need to fill your cup for somebody else's journey, don't do it. Don't bother.
Yeah. I think there's some thoughts that I'm having with that, where I agree with you completely. I think that it is important to hold those boundaries. I think, I mean, the way that I'm thinking of it is, it's obviously like everything is context dependent, right? So
Sure.
like you said, I think I'm really glad you brought in that caveat of, if this is what you want to be doing and this is your passion, then go for it.
Yeah.
There's the piece of balance there, though, also of making sure you're recognizing what you need, and that you're not eating well, or you're trying to adhere to the specific diet for your health, which is more important than anything else.
Yeah.
And then there's the other side of it, though, of understanding the context of, you need to be situationally aware, is what I heard from that, of knowing, as this woman that you described is, where she had the realization that this has no impact on my career. So I'm killing myself with these hours for no reason.
Right.
So having that ability to check in with yourself and take that inventory and saying, does this make sense for my future or not? Is this helping? Is this not? And then eliminating waste is really the lesson I'm learning from that.
Yeah, and what's the cost, right? What's the cost? You're not seeing your kids or your spouse, or you're neglecting things that are really important to you, and people that are really important to you, for people that they may not remember your name in a year or two. And look, and again, I'm not saying don't work hard. I think hard work is essential. But what I'm saying is, if it's hard work because you're passionate about it, this is what you want to be doing, then that's different. But I would say there too, because even when we started this, when I got into this business, and I said, I'm really working hard, and I'd be in the office till 7 or 8 o'clock every night, but then I stopped going to the gym, and you stop doing other things. And I think in our society, work, especially in my culture, my upbringing, work trumps everything.
Yeah.
Like, I could, tonight's Passover. If I miss Passover and told my parents, well, I have to work, that would be like the one really excusable thing, because work and income and stuff like that, it takes high precedence in our culture.
Yeah, it does. And it weighs on our identity, is what I've realized. It takes some work to realize, like, I am not my job. It is part of me, but I am not my job. And it's so cliche and cheesy to say, but then you actually deal with a situation where maybe your job is removed, and all of a sudden you're like, who the hell am I? I have no idea who I am. And I mean, man, I dealt with this January, February of this year. I was in some intense therapy, because I'm like, I just quit a career and an entire industry. And I just realized, like, I don't know who the hell I am if I'm not making money in that field, and I'm not contributing to the greater good of that field. Who am I? And then even on top of that, I'm not currently working. I'm doing school. I'm doing this podcast. And so if I'm not making money, what is my value? What is my
And then you
work?
start comparing yourself to your peers and I know your wife's very successful in her career and mine is too. And then you start, but that's the other thing that I have failed at miserably is working for the money. And that is what kept me in my last career for so long, way past its expiration date. And I'm going to do the big deal. I'm going to do the big deal. And one of my buddies said to me, he said, "You've been 6 months away from the big deal for 20 years." And I realized it was true. And people that had my tenure in that business were making a ton of money, where you're not in the business. And I was making a pittance of that. And I was seeing a therapist before I made the switch. And I said to him, "Why is the promise of this fortune not enough to drive me, to make me successful?" And he says, "It's just not. And who cares? Get out of it." And it's true. There's no. For me, it turns out I'm not financially driven, which people who know me would say, "That's what, Mom, that's weird," because you like nice things, you like to travel, you like to enjoy life, and I do, and I like money. That is true, and I need it like anybody else. That is also true, but it's not my driver. It's not my reason. It's just not. I mean, I wish maybe it were. I don't know. It's just not, though.
I have, oh yeah, man, I appreciate that so much. I have always said that too, that I don't care necessarily what I get paid. It's what am I doing? What am I contributing towards? And that I think for me was the biggest piece of stepping back and just being in school and doing this podcast. And I'm doing little things here and there, but the idea that I'm not contributing or being productive in a work setting where I'm contributing to a bigger picture, even though I am being productive in my own life and I'm building for something in the future, it's hard to wrap your head around not necessarily having a project to work on in the moment. And I realized that was really important to me, is growth and being able to see results right in front of me and being able to build towards something.
Yeah, and that's something I think about a lot. I got to tell you, one of the things I watch a lot on TikTok is people building things, like a lot of workshop people. And I used to have a workshop when we had a big house, and I said, like, that's one of the things I definitely want to do. Is I love the idea at the end of the day you can be like, look what I made today. It's it's tangible, and when you're not creating something or building something, it can be really hard to see what you've created today. And for me, I'm so, like, one of the other things I love on TikTok, it's crazy, is watching people power wash things, like to see the dirt, because it's just so satisfying to see something tangible.
Dude, I am watching, it's basically the same thing, but it's people doing people's lawns that are
I like those too.
Massively overgrown lawns, and they come in there and they just clean it up. And I love seeing that. Also, I think I've spent more hours in the middle of the night, 2, 3 in the morning, watching these men in the Philippines build things out of nothing.
Right.
Like a house out of mud with a pool. Yeah. With a pool and an incredible deck. And they build it with just mud in the middle. Like they just, I've spent so many hours watching that. And yeah, I think it is. There's something like visceral inside of us that's just, I want to see the fruits of my labor.
Yeah.
But it's also what I've learned is, and this is an important piece for burnout and having boundaries and having self boundaries. There are times to build and there's time to be in the lab, where you're experimenting with yourself and you're growing and you're learning, and then you can build again. But we have to be able to give ourselves the grace at times to not always be building, to take a step back, to learn, to relax, to get our health right, to whatever it is, so that we can come back better and build something even nicer.
Well, that's a cultural thing too. I'm a little bit older than you, not much, but a little bit. And my grandparents, like many, came here from Europe in the nick of time during the war. And my grandfather was a brickmaker in Germany. And I don't know, my grandmother did, but when they got here to the States, she worked in a factory making animal toys, sewing toys. And my grandfather was a butcher. And they somehow had enough money to buy a house, and they did. But, my dad did not come from, affluence. And so had worked every day of his life since he was 14. He actually just retired 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
At 80. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. And he didn't go easily either, but, so for me, it was always pounded into me or impressed upon me, I should say, that you must always be doing something. If you have time to lean, you've got time to clean. There's always something that can be done. There's always another call. And that is so inherent in me that, like I must do something. I must be productive. And, the idea of it wasn't until I got married and my wife taught me how to take naps, that it's okay to hit a wall during the day and be like, I'm going to go lay on that couch for 20 minutes because I need it.
Yeah. It's a learning process to learn to take care of ourselves. And again, I think it comes back to when we're discussing boundaries, discussing burnout, it requires us to be in a constant state of mindfulness in a positive way of understanding where we're currently at and being in tune with ourselves as leaders, as coworkers, as family members, as whatever it may be. We need to start recognizing the signs in ourselves so that we can take care of ourselves. And hopefully you're working in an environment that promotes that type of thinking and promotes that type of opportunity for you to rest when you need to and to take care of yourself. That's the best of both worlds. That's an ideal. Two things though. You triggered my trauma when you said, if you have time to lean, there's time to clean. I think anybody who's worked in retail or a restaurant has heard that 1,000 times.
Yeah.
And did you say the neck of time, or is it the nick of time? You said
in the nick of time. They left Europe in the nick of time.
The nick of time. Okay, I think you said the neck.
Was that right, or is it the neck of time? I don't know.
I don't know. Now you're making me question myself.
How about this? They left just in time.
Just in time. Perfect.
Yeah.
There's all these sayings recently that I feel like a moron, but there's all these things that I'm learning, sayings that I've just been thinking wrong my whole life.
Oh, yeah. I'm constantly Googling, is it this or is it that or is it?
Yeah, so now I'm starting to question everything I say, going back to our indecisiveness. Like,
is it buck naked or butt naked? I think it's buck naked, but butt naked makes sense too. So
exactly, it makes. Well, also, it was the one for me was making ends meet, where I thought I didn't realize it was making two ends meet.
Right.
I thought making ends meet was like a saying from the Renaissance times or something, where ends meet was like the crappy quality, cheap meat. So you're only making ends meet, like you're making enough to buy ends meet.
I think that makes sense. I do.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Also, there was another one too that I was talking with my wife about that she was laughing. That was oh my God, it was about like, no, if I think about it, whatever. So it doesn't matter. But there was one she like couldn't believe. She's like, as a smart person, I don't understand how you can be so dumb. I'm like, I don't know.
It happens.
Yeah. Well, this has been a great conversation. I hope it brought some levity to some people's lives. It's always good for us to talk. But two, I think the important piece here is understanding ourselves and understanding our burnout, knowing if we're living within our passion or not. And if we're not, maybe taking time to see if we have the privilege to make a change in our lives, if we have that ability to do so. And if not, finding ways to find joy and a release somewhere else.
Yeah. And I want to just end with a story that I love, and I can send this to you. I listen to a podcast that had every day it airs a little bit of a clip of something in the guy. It's called the Depression Detox podcast. It's a terrible name, but there's some really good stuff that I've gotten from it. And one of the stories which I love is Oprah Winfrey telling the story of how she got the role of what is it? What Harpo in The Color Purple.
Okay.
And how she was called in to read for it. She had read the book and became obsessed with the book. And she was working on the morning news at a radio station and a television station in Chicago. And she brought out like everyone a copy. And then like out of the blue one day, she gets a call from a casting director. So we want you to come in and read for a movie we're doing. And the movie was called like Rain Song or something like that. And she was like, okay. I mean, I've been praying for The Color Purple, but okay. But the minute she gets there, she looks at the script, she knows it's The Color Purple. This is just the name they have on it for Moon Song or something to keep it. And how she reads for it, and she's not hearing anything back from anybody, and she's desperate. And she calls the casting director, and the casting director says to her at the time, look, I have real actresses in my office. And he says, who just left? And she's like, oh my, those are real actresses. And she checks herself into a fat farm, into I don't know what they would call it. I guess a treatment center for eating disorder.
I don't think a fat farm.
She called it a fat farm.
I don't think they.
And she's walking around the track, and she's trying to get herself to accept that she did not get the part, that this is not. And she's walking around the track and she's praying, oh God, oh Jesus, let it go. Please help me to let it go. And then like a couple of times around, she comes to a place where she says, well, I've decided that I'm okay with what I'm not getting, but I can't go see it because I can't stand to see the other actress in my role. And then a few times more around the track, and she's finally comes to a place where she says, not only can I be grateful for the opportunity to have read for the part, and grateful for the actress that does get the part, but that she decided that she would go see it and support that actress.
Wow.
And she talks about like the weight of the world coming off her shoulders, and just like being just light, emotionally and spiritually lighter. And 5 minutes after that, some woman comes running out to her and says, are you Oprah? And she says, yeah. They say, you have a phone call. It's Steven Spielberg. And she goes inside and he says, can you be in my office tomorrow morning? And I think I love that. I've listened to that so many times. I love that because it's like, it's true. Once we truly surrender, once we truly put it down, it's like you can hear the key and the lock just open up. And it's true all the time. It's true all the time. Just to let it go.
That is a great story. And
it's a great story.
Things do tend to work out once we let go. They have a way of working out, but the more we obsess, the more it controls us. Right. It's pretty amazing. Yeah. So tell me real quick, let's just plug Versa Pointe.
Yes.
So what is Versa Pointe?
So Versa Pointe is a men's executive treatment program. It's a small program where we only take 5 clients at a time. So very concierge. Everybody has their own private suite. We have a beautiful property, and we're literally building out programming around our individual clients for their individual needs. So it's not like we have one therapist or 2 therapists and you can do one or the other. We're really starting from the beginning and building a ground up recovery program for each client, and it can be varying lengths of time. So we have a gentleman that's coming in this week, and he is an avid golfer, and so now we're bringing in a recovery coach who is also an avid golfer. And these guys kind of actually look alike. They both look like models from the country club, white hair and the kind of the silky, golf shirts and all that. Sure. So we want his experience to be enjoyable. And not that we're a free pass of playing golf, but look, it's the model has changed over the years, and we want people to be comfortable with us so they stay longer and they really engage in their recovery and they really turn the corner and help a lot of these men understand that the same skills and intelligence that work for them in the boardroom do not work in recovery, that one is a spiritual journey and one is, they're completely two different things. And that takes, for people who are used to being in control of everything, it's really hard, and it takes a hot minute for them to start to see how this thing works and how they get it. It can be very heady until you see it, till you surrender, until you let go. Yeah.
It's a very smart model. And especially with people like that, I think they need to find their why to change. And those people as high achievers, they need the evidence that supports, it says, hey, this is what you need to do. This is how it should be done. But they need to be willing to see that evidence and see it in their own terms. So having someone who loves golf be able to learn about recovery on the golf course, which is probably where this guy does a ton of his business, makes a lot of sense. He's used to making changes on the golf course in his life, in his business.
Well, he's probably never played a round of golf sober.
Right. So he's
learning not that he can remember.
Right.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense. I will say also, I do run a group there once a week.
Yes.
Whenever there's clients, I bring in, it's a authentic leadership, focusing on the intersection of leadership and recovery. So it's a joy of mine. I get to be there. I'll be there this Thursday.
Great. I'm excited. I think personally, when we have people like you, Blake, we're doing the right thing. When we're surrounding ourselves with people that have done the journey and their heart is in it, and they're really here to help other people, and their reward is seeing other people. I mean, that really is the greatest reward, right? I don't care how much money you make, but getting a note from a mom at Thanksgiving saying, my son is 2 years sober and I want to thank you. And it's like, oh my,
literally nothing better.
There's no high that's higher than that. So
I've always said also, we talked about not being money driven. I am thank you driven, where it's those thank yous, it's that gratitude, it's to know that we had whatever small impact we've had on someone's life. That's what keeps me going. That's what keeps me engaged. Knowing that someone, even momentarily, feels better just because I was in their life for a brief period of time or a long period of time. I don't know if that's codependency. You can call it whatever you want, but to me, that fills my heart. I love that stuff.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I agree. So, I really appreciate this. Versa Pointe, so VersaPointe.com. And my phone, then my contact information is on the website.
Perfect.
Yeah. So if anyone who wants,
Well, thanks for joining me, man.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed this. This was fun.
This will be airing after Passover, but we'll just go ahead and say retroactive. Happy Passover, everybody.
Happy Passover.
Chag Sameach. So, all right. Thank you, Marc. I appreciate you coming on. Oh, before we go, if you enjoyed this episode and you're watching this on YouTube, do me a favor and put it in the comment section below something that you've learned from this episode that was new, that you enjoyed. Like, subscribe. If you're listening to this podcast on any of the podcast listening platforms, do me a favor and leave a review, a 5-star review for this podcast. If you didn't enjoy the episode, just let it go. You don't have to leave a review. Thanks, everyone.